The following program is the work of the broadcast students at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. BCIT Magazine features news stories from around the Lower Mainland, which were produced over the last week. Responsibility for the content of the show rests completely with the students and their instructors.
Coming up on BCIT Magazine, a 15-year-old is dead after a shooting in Mount Pleasant.
A national bank faces backlash from Kinder Morgan protesters.
And tips on how to start eating healthier this year.
Hello and welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Spencer Harwood.
And I'm Tanushree Pillai. A young boy is dead after a shooting in Vancouver. Katie Penny has more on this story.
It may not look like it now, but this busy street was the scene of a shootout Saturday night, which took the lives of a 15-year-old boy from Coquitlam and a shooter, 23-year-old Kevin Whiteside. Diners witnessed the shooting from a nearby restaurant. The young boy was shot while in a passing car. He was taken to hospital but passed away Monday night after being on life support for 3 days. The Vancouver Chief of Police says he's heartbroken about the incident.
It's rare in Vancouver for an innocent victim to be caught up in this type of violence. But every time criminals decide to exchange gunfire on our streets, they endanger the lives of everybody around them.
Palmer confirmed the boy was out to dinner with his family before he was caught in the crossfire. A driver in his 30s was also grazed by a bullet and treated at the scene. Police say at least 50 officers are investigating and are asking for dashcam footage from possible witnesses. Katie Penny in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Activists gathered at an East Vancouver cafe to raise legal defense funds for Kinder Morgan protesters. Beth Miriam has more.
Locked up like castle.
They're coming together for a night of poetry and music. This is a fundraiser for Raven Trust, a group that's raising funds for court challenges against Kinder Morgan pipeline.
I'm really concerned about climate change like many people, and it seems like expanding fossil fuels extraction, which this pipeline expansion is designed to do, is contrary to addressing the climate crisis.
The poets at the event range in age, background, and experience. A number of the poets are Indigenous. Performers here feel art is the best way to impact social change.
I think it's very important. I think that actually it reaches a lot of people, more so than just regular rhetoric.
I think everyone who's reading tonight just has a real strong commitment to sustainability. People obviously want to hear these voices, and that's why we see a packed house here tonight.
This event raised $1,400 to go into the bank of the $600,000 Raven Trust has collected thus far against Kinder Morgan.
They're doing backdoor business behind barbed wire fences, so it's time for us to occupy this.
Beth Miriam in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
We're armed with drunk.
Protesters descended on the Kinder Morgan terminal in Burnaby this past weekend. But as Trevor Knapp reports, the pipeline giant wasn't the only company under fire.
TD Bank at Sperling and Hastings, the scene of the latest Kinder Morgan pipeline protest. TD currently has $731 million invested in the pipeline's expansion project. Protesters want TD Bank to divest.
We're seeing some people pull away now, which is really encouraging, but TD Bank, as the biggest investor, is the center of our campaign saying divest.
Pipelines, no more takers! Power to the people, not the bankers!
Thomas Davies is one of Climate Conversion Group's members that were on hand. Davies was quick to point out what he thinks is TD's hypocrisy.
And the fact that banks like TD talk a lot about having community and protecting the environment, but what they're financing and with the money that they're spending says otherwise. So we want to draw a really strong connection between these two things.
No consent, no pipelines! No consent, no pipelines! No consent, no pipelines!
Kinder Morgan demonstrators ended up marching all the way to Burnaby Mountain's Westridge Marine Terminal, where construction has begun. Oil taking capacity there is now expected to triple, but that won't stop them from objecting and standing their ground, whether it be by chanting,
Go!
playing the bagpipes, or even singing. Trevor Knapp in Burnaby for BCIT Magazine.
Our reporter Trevor Knapp now joins us live. Trevor, what can you tell us about the atmosphere at the protest?
Yeah, Spencer, there was a real feeling of hope in the air at the protest. These protesters truly believe that their voices together can culminate and stop the construction of this pipeline. Spencer?
And what is the protesters' main message for Prime Minister Trudeau?
Yeah, they want Prime Minister Trudeau to put his money where his mouth is. One of the protesters that I talked to at the rally said that he wants Justin Trudeau to carry through with his word and respect the rights of the Indigenous people. Back to you.
Coming up next on BCIT Magazine, women delegates from around the world meet in Vancouver to talk peace in Korea.
And a rally to end racism in Vancouver.
Back door to control.
Zoom out just a tiny bit.
Sorry, say that again?
Can you zoom out a tiny bit?
It's a quick 2 years. They get you in and they get you out, but you leave with so much more knowledge than you walk in.
The BC Hockey League hosted the 3rd annual BCHL Showcase last weekend. The showcase also allows fans to come.
The tools you learn are very valuable. You leave with a comprehensive knowledge of many of the programs that are used in everyday workforces around all the newsrooms in Vancouver. Beginning of your 2-year program, you don't really expect that in 2 years' time you're walking out ready to be a part of the journalism industry.
Good morning and welcome to Evolution News. I'm Chantal Pesquitza.
I was lucky enough to get a job a week after I graduated. I think that has a lot to do with the teachers and fellow students prepping you for the outside life once you graduate from BCIT. Yeah, if it wasn't for BCIT, I'd be lost.
Welcome back to BCIT Magazine. Women from around the world rallied in Vancouver this week to find a solution to the crisis in Korea. Ben Phillips has more on this story.
Korean drummers and peace marchers made their presence known in downtown Vancouver on Monday night. Members of Women Crossing the Demilitarized Zone met in Vancouver as they hope to be fairly represented as foreign ministers also meet to talk safety and security towards North Korea. Nan Kim, a history professor at the University of Wisconsin, is part of the organizing group.
Press for the inclusion of women in that peace process. The vigil, the candlelight vigil, is a way for us to bring in the larger community, to also express our hopes for peace. Of course.
The march Monday night in Vancouver was joined simultaneously with a peace march in South Korea near Pyeongchang. The Vancouver march started at the art gallery and made its way to Jackpool Plaza. Of those in the march was retired U.S. Army Reserve Colonel and former diplomat Ann Wright.
We do not want war. We know that the people on the Korean Peninsula do not want war. We know the North Koreans do not want war, and we know the South Koreans do not want war. And I'll tell you, even the statistics in the warmongering United States of America says by its citizens, they don't want war.
The crowd raised candles and sang songs of peace for the foreign ministers and those who joined them across the Pacific in South Korea. Ben Phillips in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Community members from East Hastings gathered this week to commit to reconciliation. Our reporter Beth Merriam has more on this.
This gathering is about reconciling Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in hopes of forming new relationships. It's about coming together and getting to know each other here at the Hastings Community Center. Indigenous elders and politicians celebrated Indigenous culture, but also reiterated the need to change policies and overhaul programs to fix the damage done by residential schools.
Education system for children, shouldn't all children have equal opportunities and be supported in the same way? But yet that's not reality today.
More than 150,000 Indigenous children were placed in residential schools between 1870 and 1996. More than 80,000 school children are living today.
We've always been told that a lot of our culture was lost because of residential school, but
I like to say that we're still here, we're still strong, we're all working together to heal from what residential school had done to our people.
Showcasing their art and culture with pride is an act of survival.
The reconciliation is a lot of just being really who you are. Residential school and everything that previously went on and what's still continuing to happen, that we are still practicing our art, our culture, our history that we've never really done.
For many here, reconciliation is not just a one-day event. It's an ongoing process, a promise of inclusion and change. Beth Merriam in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
We are joined live by our reporter Beth Merriam now. So Beth, what were some of the things the speakers said at the event?
Well, MP Jenny Kwan mentioned that she was going to push for equal and quality access to education for Indigenous children. And Vancouver Park Board Commissioner Stuart McKinnon mentioned that he would consult with First Nations for the renaming of Siwash Rock. Tanu?
And what was the feeling like in the room?
Well, there was a lot of enthusiasm and smiles at the event. Kids and families were partaking in dances and exercises, so the room was really buzzing with excitement. Back to you.
Thank you, Beth. We now go to my co-anchor Spencer Harwood to talk about nutrition with our special guest, Jordan Bruce. Spencer?
Thanks, Tanu. We're joined now by Jordan Bruce from Bruce's Roots. Jordan, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's get started. Why don't you tell us about what you have in front of us just first?
Okay, so today I thought it would be great to make a mackerel bowl or a Buddha bowl. So basically, you can take whatever you have in your fridge or your pantry, and you can you make a big batch of it, keep it in the fridge so that when you get home from work, you can make something quickly, and then you just combine it. So we got our protein and our grain is quinoa, we got sweet potatoes, we have black beans, and parsley and spinach, and then you can assemble it with whatever foods you like, and you're set. You could add avocado for good fats.
So you just leave that overnight in the fridge, let it set, or kind of eat it right away?
I usually make like a big batch of quinoa at night, and then when I get home from work for the next few days, I have it ready to go.
So why don't you walk us through kind of how you'd get one of your Buddha bowls started, and we can find out a little bit more about you.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so usually I start with whatever grain you want. You can use quinoa, you can use rice. Quinoa is really high in protein, so it's nice, and it's gluten-free for anyone who's gluten-free. Then I'll usually go to black beans. You could use chickpeas.
Love chickpeas. What are these these seasonings right here that we're looking at?
So here we have spinach. I just chopped it because I like it nice and like small versus like big leaves. We have parsley. Do you like parsley?
I love parsley.
Okay, do you want to add a bit of parsley?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I haven't really torn it up yet, so you can just rip it. Yeah. We have some hemp seeds, which are really high in fats, good fats, omega-3s, and some proteins.
Okay.
Put some of those on there. And then we have hummus. It's not hard to get plant protein, that is for sure.
Huge fan of hummus.
Okay.
Cannot have enough.
And you can, I'm kind of rushing here, but you can, make this look really pretty as well.
So would you toss it up at the end or just kind of like stir it all in together?
So this is like the pretty way of doing it, and you kind of keep everything separate, and then when you're about to eat it, you can just mix it up. I usually like to add some sprouts, really high in micronutrients.
Lastly, if you are eating vegan, and as you said you are, what can you do to make sure that you're getting a really balanced diet and you're eating healthy for yourself?
Yeah, so I like to keep it really simple. It can be kind of overwhelming. We want to make sure we're eating lots of whole foods. We want to make sure we're not overdoing it on sugar, on caffeine and coffee, and just sticking to as natural as possible. Here we have all this colorful, amazing food. There's nothing that's processed. This is going to give us energy, and we're going to feel alive, and we really need to focus maybe on if we're rushed, let's food prep instead of going through the fast food restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this looks fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you joining us. It was lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
And hopefully we see you again soon.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Police are investigating after a body was found inside a burnt vehicle near Trail BC. Officers say the Honda Civic was found abandoned near Highway 72. They're treating the death as suspicious and are now asking for witnesses to contact them.
Coming up on BCIT Magazine, a Vancouver journalist shines a spotlight on the opioid crisis in his new book.
And a youth-led cabaret show raises funds for the LGBTQ+ community.
Standby graphics, ready camera one.
If you want to experience the fast-paced world of news,
today on BCIT Magazine, striking,
make magic on a movie set,
frame,
and action, or bring your creative ideas to life. BCIT's hands-on training will get you started. BCIT Television and Video Production. Your possibilities start here.
I chose BCIT because I know that all the programs are very hands-on. We have our own radio station, like it's one of the best programs that I've ever heard of.
I am starting a job on Monday, so confidence is high.
Honestly, I didn't think it was going to be this fun.
Oh, hi there. I was just looking up some things to do this weekend. I'll share them with you. The first one is the Dine Out Vancouver Festival. It's about 300 restaurants with 3-course meals at very low prices.
If you're more into the arts, the Museum of Vancouver is hosting a photo exhibit that's showcasing how protest helped shape the city's identity.
It's cold out there. If you want to warm up this winter, the Vancouver Hot Chocolate Festival starts this weekend. We're talking different kinds of cocoa, plus any topping you can think of.
Hot chocolate sounds good. A 19-year-old Muslim woman is fighting to end religious discrimination. Our reporter Veronica Beltran tells us what inspired this woman to rally.
Walla Zayden is 19 years old and calls Vancouver home, a city where racism is believed to not exist. But Zayden says that for her, this is not the case.
Racism is real in Vancouver, especially that stereotypically Vancouver is a diverse city and racism doesn't exist. I want to get them there and to show them that, hey, it does exist and we have to stop ourselves.
Zayden says that there was a specific situation that made her snap and gave her the drive to speak out.
I'm alone when facing the face of oppression. It's my sister, Najat. She's 16 years old.
She says her sister was attacked on her way to a bus stop back in December.
He came up to her, approached her, and he tried to pull her hijab off and told her that she's dangerous and should go back to, her country. Okay, and that just made me really angry. I felt like I had to take action.
People of many ethnic backgrounds stepped up at the event to share their stories through poetry, speeches, and song. Among them, Noor Fidel, who was assaulted on transit in December and says you're never ready for it to happen to you.
I always told myself, no, I'll be okay, you guys. Mom and Dad, I'll be okay. So to finally have that happen to you and to have to call your parents and tell them the thing that you've been telling me to be careful about, and I kept pushing it away my entire life, it happened tonight.
Zayden currently studies journalism and says that she's inspired to succeed, so one day she can share stories like these and help make a change. Veronica Beltran in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
An award-winning journalist is pushing for policy change in his new book on the opioid crisis. My co-anchor Tanushree Pillai has more on this story.
You're always so shy, and look at you, Mr. Public Speaker.
I don't mind it.
This might look like your usual book signing, except the stakes are much higher. Travis Lupik has been at the front line of the fentanyl crisis as a journalist. He's now using his knowledge to help push the crisis into the spotlight and forcing health officials to act. Lupik's book, Fighting for Space, takes a look into Vancouver's drug crisis in the 90s.
What drug users are saying needs to happen today is they're suggesting a more complicated solution than what was done in the 90s. Largely, they're suggesting decriminalization of all illicit drugs and then going even a step further and legalizing, which means regulation and supply controlled by the government. It sounds scary, it sounds radical, and it is radical, but the problem, fentanyl, is radical. And so, if fentanyl changed the game, then we need to completely change our response.
According to the BC Coroner's Service, there were more than 1,200 overdose deaths between January and October 2017. At the book signing, Lupik spoke to frontline workers and the public about how policymakers need to listen to drug users. He was joined by downtown East Side activist Ann Livingston. For her, the gap between rich and poor is a huge part of the problem.
I think it's about inequity. The issues that make the inequality that cause people to die from drug use are the same things that are causing all of the other misery within our community.
Removing the criminal connection to drugs is just one solution, Lupik says. With Fighting for Space, he wants to continue pushing policymakers to rethink their war on drugs. Tanushree Pillai in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine. 3 local playwrights are bringing their activism to the stage. My co-anchor Spencer Harwood has more from the Fire Hall Arts Center here.
Stop the pipelines. Then what? They already transported by rail along 2 of the greatest salmon-bearing rivers.
Kevin Loring understands the power of the stage.
The theater offers an opportunity for people who maybe don't agree to sit together and to have these issues brought before them.
As the first artistic director for Indigenous theater at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa, Loring knows his words carry the power to connect with the audience.
What theater does that protesting or other forms of activism may not be able to accomplish in the same way is that we take you along a story. So we have a way of impacting, I think, our audience in an emotional level, an intellectual level, and in a personal way because we're all sitting in a room together.
Loring, Sebastian Archibald, and Quilemia Sparrow wrote and star in the play which explores the dissenting opinions around pipelines and fossil fuels on the West Coast. But unlike other plays, the second act doesn't follow a script.
Act 2 is almost like this town hall meeting where we talk about the issues brought up in the play with the guest speaker and the audience and us as the performers, and it becomes a real kind of community dialogue and community exercise.
The 3 actors all bring a different perspective and persona to the stage, which Archibald thinks is critical to the message of the play.
The biggest thing I think with any kind of activism is you have to talk to people, and you have to listen to people, and you have to figure out a way where we can get on side and work together to move forward.
The audience engaged with director Chelsea Haberlin and Ben West from Tanker-Free, BC after the quick intermission. The play runs at the Fire Hall Arts Centre in East Vancouver until January 20th. Spencer Harwood in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
It made me realize how powerful we can be together.
A group of students in North Vancouver has raised funds for a charity to help queer immigrants settle into their new lives in Canada. Twyla Amato has more on this meaningful night.
It was a night full of love and inspiration. But beforehand, backstage was a buzz at the Deep Cove Shaw Theatre as students made last-minute preparations before going on stage. Seacove Secondary's Jazz in the Box was one of the night's performers that helped raise more than $19,000 for Rainbow Refugee, which helps LGBTQ+ immigrants seeking homes in Canada. Some performers were eager to be allies, while others, like Sophie, have a special connection to the LGBTQ+ community.
My family is a pretty diverse bunch of LGBT people. So I have my brother who's transgender, and then my sister is non-binary, and my little sister is a lesbian, and I am pansexual. So we have a broad range of people and sexualities and gender identities.
Reese Findler organized the concert. The grade 11 Seacove student says it was a memorable experience.
And I thought it was the perfect thing to donate to because of how relevant both the refugee scenario is in Vancouver and also just LGBTQ+ rights are always relevant. I feel amazing. I feel like I want to do it all over again, so who knows in the future.
As well as inspiring others to take action, these students also made a strong impression on each other, supporting a cause they believe in. Twyla Amato in North Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
The world needs now is love, sweet love.
There are only 4 teams remaining in the NFL playoffs. Our reporters Trevor Knapp and Ben Phillips are back with their predictions on who will advance next to the Super Bowl.
Thank you, Tanu. Yes, sir. Trevor Knapp, Ben Phillips were here at BCIT's Burnaby campus. And Ben, we were just coming off just an absolutely crazy NFL divisional round. It was nuts.
I don't even know where to begin. You know, I think the best place to start, your call, Jacksonville beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought Ben Roethlisberger was a shoo-in.
Not only did the Jags beat the Steelers, but that was a mugging in the first half. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger got some late touchdowns there to make the score look a little bit better.
The other game that maybe was a bit more of a surprise, Nick Foles coming through and beating the Atlanta Falcons. Philadelphia will play Minnesota.
Yeah, I call it Foles' goal. That was a fluke of a game. Are you kidding me? Atlanta played terribly. Julio Jones, what are you doing on that last play, man? The rollout by Matt Ryan and Julio Jones doesn't even come down with it. Are you kidding me? Minnesota, this team is destined. The last game, Case Keenum just throws it up. Last play, Stephon Diggs comes down with it. This team, meant to be, Ben. The Vikings are going to beat Nick Foles. Are you kidding me? Not even close. It might be a blowout in Minnesota.
That one I can agree with. The one I can't agree with you think Jacksonville is going to beat the Patriots?
The Jaguars, they're not the kind of offense that can play when they're down, but they will never be down in this game. The Jaguars will never be losing in this game. They will lead the Patriots pretty healthily into the halftime. Patriots will make a last-ditch effort. Psycho Tom, not your year, buddy. Blake Bortles is going to the Super Bowl.
No, Fournette, he had a bit of an ankle injury at the start of the game against the Steelers. He also had a minor car accident this week. I think that's going to throw him off. Their run game is not going to be able to support them. They're not going to be able to beat the Patriots. The Patriots are going back. They're going to defend their Super Bowl, and I think they're potentially going to win the Super Bowl.
Can't wait. Next up, Super Bowl predictions next week.
If you have any questions regarding the show, you can contact us at bcit.com or bcitbroadcastnews.ca.
Thank you for watching our show. I'm Tanushree Pillai.
And I'm Spencer Harwood. We leave you now with another look at the Korean Peace March.